I found my name on a termination letter before I was even accused of anything. That's not a typo, my firing was pre-written, waiting in the HR printer tray like a loaded trap. Before I dive in, do me a solid, hit subscribe, drop a like, and tell me in the comments, if you caught your own pink slip ahead of time, would you confront them or play along to see who's pulling the strings? I'm a compliance analyst at a mid-size fintech in Austin. We sell transparency to banks, which would be hilarious if the stakes weren't my rent and health insurance. 3 weeks before the quarterly audit, our new VP of Risk, Maya, arrived like a thunderclap, impossible heels, immaculate spreadsheets, and a smile that never reached her eyes. She called me her clean hands guy. At first, I took it as a compliment. Now it sounds like a warning. The morning it started, the office was quiet, that weird post-storm hush our open floor plan never earned. I went to the printer to grab a client report, and there it was, Company Confidential. Subject, Termination, Cause. My name. Violation of data handling protocols. Beneath it, empty signature lines for Maya and our CFO, Tanner. No date. Like they were just waiting for a reason, or planning to manufacture one. I snatched the paper and slid it under a legal pad, heart pounding loud enough to trigger the motion sensors. My first thought, who else knows? Second, what violation? I build the checklists that prevent violations. Third, if I show this to HR, do I become the problem? Back at my desk, an email popped up from an anonymous Proton address, subject line Sunshine. Inside was one file, sunshine_pool.xlsx. No message. Just the file. And just like that, the floor dropped out from under my day. Who here's the villain, Maya, Tanner, or me? What would you do first? I stared at the file like it was radioactive. Sunshine_pool.xlsx. No context, no note, just that. My gut told me opening it at work was a bad idea, but my curiosity won. I minimized Outlook, slipped on headphones for cover, and double-clicked. The spreadsheet was massive, thousands of rows. At first glance it looked like some vendor billing log. But the headers didn't match any system we used. Column A, Employee ID. Column B, Pool Value. Column C, Adjustment. My employee ID was in row 327, tagged with a number that didn't make sense, $45,000 under pool value. Next to it, minus $45,000 adjustment. Like someone had assigned me money and then clawed it back. Scrolling down, I saw familiar names, colleagues in accounting, IT, even the janitorial staff. Some had six-figure pool values. Some had zeros. Others had bonuses no one ever received. My pulse spiked. Was this a slush fund? A payroll scam? Or something darker, like hush money? Halfway through row 800, I spotted Maya's name. Her pool value was a staggering $350,000, labeled Q1 Retain. Next to it, plus $350,000 adjustment. Paid. Cleared. She'd been here a month. No way that was legit. I closed the file so fast my mouse skidded. My first instinct was to run it to HR, but HR worked under Tanner, the CFO who had his name on my unsigned termination letter. If they were both in on this, reporting it might be suicide. Just then, Maya walked past my desk, heels clicking like a metronome of doom. She didn't look at me, but her phone buzzed in her hand, and I swear I saw the word Sunshine flash across her screen before she swiped it away. Coincidence? No way. Someone wanted me to see that file. But why me? Why now? Would you dig deeper, or play dumb until you're sure who's pulling the strings? I didn't sleep that night. My brain kept looping over the spreadsheet, the fake termination letter, and Maya's cold smile. By morning, I'd convinced myself maybe it was all some weird accounting quirk, some internal joke I didn't understand. But deep down, I knew, this was deliberate. Someone set a trap, and my name was bait. The office felt different the next day. People avoided eye contact, like they knew something I didn't. In the break room, two analysts I usually joked with went silent the second I walked in. My coffee tasted bitter, not from the grounds, but from the paranoia brewing in my chest. At 10:15 sharp, an email hit my inbox from Maya, Conference Room B. Bring compliance logs for Q1. Simple. Too simple. When I walked in, Tanner was already there, leaning against the table with that salesman's grin he wore like armor. Maya sat opposite, her laptop open but angled away from me. "Morning," Tanner said. "We've had concerns about your documentation." I froze. My documentation was bulletproof. I lived for rules and receipts. Maya slid a folder across the table. Inside were copies of my logs, but doctored. Rows deleted. Timestamps altered. One entry was outright fabricated, access to a client file at 2 a.m. under my credentials. Care to explain? Maya asked, her tone soft but lethal. My mouth went dry. This wasn't sloppy fraud, it was surgical. Someone had built a narrative that I was leaking client data after hours. The unsigned termination letter suddenly made perfect sense. They were manufacturing a paper trail to burn me. I kept my face neutral. That's not my work, I said carefully. And if you'd like, I can pull server backups right now to prove it. Maya's eyes flickered, just for a second. Then she smiled. Why don't you do that? We'll reconvene tomorrow. The moment I left, my phone buzzed again, from the same anonymous Proton address. They know you've seen sunshine. At that point, I realized, I wasn't just in danger of losing my job. I was in danger of being framed. What would you do, expose the file immediately, or bide your time and gather proof? By the third day, I was walking through the office like a man with a target on his back. Every conversation stopped when I passed. People whispered, glanced at me, then looked away like I was contagious. I couldn't tell if it was paranoia or if they really knew what was happening. At lunch, I sat alone in the courtyard scrolling through my phone, trying to piece together the puzzle. That's when a Slack notification popped up, one I shouldn't have seen. A private channel I was never part of suddenly appeared on my sidebar, #SunshineWhisper. My heart hammered as I clicked. The messages were a stream of inside jokes, coded words, and links to files. I recognized usernames, some were managers, some just regular co-workers. One message from a week ago said, "Pool updated. Compliance guy won't see it coming." My blood ran cold. Compliance guy. That was me. Before I could scroll further, the channel disappeared. Vanished like it had never existed. Seconds later, an anonymous DM hit my Slack, "Careful what you click. We're watching." That night, I couldn't shake the feeling someone wanted me paranoid, isolated, doubting my own sanity. But why go through so much effort just to cut me loose? Unless, I wasn't the only one. I dug back into sunshine_pool.xlsx, this time at home on a personal laptop. I started cross-referencing employee IDs with LinkedIn profiles. That's when I noticed something insane. 3 of the employees listed weren't even real people. Their IDs matched no one on our staff directory. Ghost employees, drawing salaries into real bank accounts. The numbers weren't small. We're talking hundreds of thousands funneled out each quarter. And if I connected the dots, it led right to the top, Tanner. But then why was Maya involved? Was she protecting him? Or setting him up? The Proton mail address pinged again. "If you want the truth, parking garage, level 2, tomorrow. Noon. Come alone." Would you risk going, or ignore it and hope the storm passed? The next day, my hands shook so badly I almost dropped my keycard at the security gate. Parking garages always creep me out, the stale air, flickering lights, the sound of your own footsteps echoing like someone else is following. At exactly noon, I walked down to level 2. It was mostly empty except for a silver Camry parked crooked across 2 spots. I scanned the shadows, my pulse racing. That's when a voice hissed, "Over here." A man stepped out from behind a pillar. Mid-30s, rumpled suit, dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept in weeks. He raised both hands in a show of peace. "Don't freak out," he said. "My name's Eric. I used to work in internal audit." "Used to?" I asked. "They pushed me out. Same playbook they're running on you. Fabricated violations, whispered rumors, HR meetings that go nowhere until you quit or they fire you. But I made the mistake of asking too many questions about Sunshine." My chest tightened. "So it's real?" He nodded grimly. "Ghost employees. Slush funds. Kickbacks. It's all run through Tanner's office. Maya? She's new, but she's not his ally. She's building her own leverage. That spreadsheet was bait. Someone wants you in the middle of this mess." "Why me?" I asked. Eric pulled out a thumb drive and pressed it into my palm. "Because you still have credibility. I don't. That drive has proof, bank transfers, falsified audits, even emails between Tanner and the board. But if they find out you have it, you're done. And I mean done." Before I could ask another question, Eric glanced over my shoulder, cursed, and bolted into the stairwell. I spun just in time to see a black SUV roll slowly past the garage entrance, tinted windows impossible to read. My stomach dropped. I suddenly realized, I wasn't just dealing with office politics anymore. This was bigger. Would you trust Eric's files, or assume he's just another pawn in a dangerous game? I slipped the thumb drive into my jacket pocket like it was contraband, which, in a way, it was. The rest of the day I couldn't focus. Every time Maya walked by, I wondered if she knew. Every time Tanner cracked a joke at the coffee machine, I imagined him counting stolen money in some offshore account. That night, I waited until I was home, blinds drawn, laptop disconnected from Wi-Fi. My heart thudded as I slid the drive in. A folder popped open, Sunshine Evidence. Inside were dozens of PDFs and spreadsheets. The first was a wire transfer log, accounts in the Cayman Islands, monthly payments labeled with employee IDs. The fake names from the Sunshine file appeared over and over. Another doc was a chain of emails between Tanner and a consultant, discussing pool adjustments like they were moving Monopoly money. Only this was real cash. But then I saw something that made me go cold, my name. In an email Tanner wrote, "Our compliance guy will take the fall if this leaks. Draft the paperwork." The email was dated 2 weeks before I found my pre-written termination letter. They had been setting me up from the start. I wanted to throw up. This wasn't just evidence, it was a death sentence if they found out I had it. Just as I was copying the files to a hidden folder, a new email notification flashed across my screen, from Maya. The subject line, "Let's talk." No body, no details. Just that. I sat frozen, staring at it. How did she know I was digging tonight? Was she offering a lifeline? Or tightening the noose? If you were me, would you meet with Maya, or stay silent and hope you could find another way out? The next morning, I showed up to work running on 3 hours of sleep and a stomach full of dread. Maya was waiting at my desk, leaning casually against the partition like she owned the place. "Walk with me," she said. No smile, no small talk. She led me into an empty conference room, closed the blinds, and locked the door. Then she dropped a manila folder on the table. Inside were printouts of the same documents I'd seen on Eric's drive, ghost employees, wire transfers, the Cayman accounts. My chest tightened. She knew. "I assume you've seen these," she said calmly. I didn't answer, but my silence betrayed me. She gave the faintest smirk. "Good. Then we don't need to waste time pretending. Tanner thinks you're the weak link. He's already building the narrative that you went rogue, sold data, and will be terminated quietly. He thinks no one will question it. But I don't want you fired. I want you useful." Her words landed like a hook in my gut. Useful? To her? "What do you want from me?" I asked. Maya leaned in. "I'm going to take Tanner down. But I can't do it alone. He has the board wrapped around his finger. You, on the other hand, are clean. If I give you evidence, real evidence, will you help me burn him?" I stared at her. She wasn't bluffing, her eyes were sharp, hungry, dangerous. But was she the lesser evil, or just another wolf circling the same kill? Before I could answer, she slid a flash drive across the table. "Think carefully. With this, you either become my ally, or Tanner's scapegoat. Decide quickly." I pocketed the drive, my mind a storm. If you were me, would you trust Maya's offer, or assume she's playing her own game and setting another trap? By the time I got back to my desk, my pulse hadn't slowed. 2 flash drives now burned holes in my pocket, Eric's and Maya's. Both filled with evidence, both implicating Tanner, but each coming from someone with their own agenda. Proof or poison? Ally or trap? I didn't plug Maya's drive in immediately. Instead, I started watching her. The way she carried herself through the office, the way people stiffened when she entered a room. She wasn't just feared, she was calculating every step. Even Tanner seemed to pause when she spoke, like he was measuring her threat level. That told me one thing, she wasn't lying about wanting to bring him down. But the bigger question was why. That afternoon, I got another anonymous Proton mail. "Be careful. One of them already knows you have both drives." The bottom dropped out of my stomach. Both. That meant either Maya had eyes on me outside the office, or Eric wasn't the washed-up whistleblower he claimed to be. Maybe he was still inside this whole operation, feeding me just enough to corner myself. At 5:30, as people were packing up, I ducked into the server room. I hooked up Eric's drive, running hashes against the actual audit logs. His files checked out, authentic. No tampering. Then I tested Maya's. To my shock, her data was cleaner. Perfect timestamps, signed digital certificates, even board meeting notes. Almost too perfect, like she'd anticipated scrutiny. My head spun. If both sets were real, that meant two people, one ex-employee, one VP, wanted Tanner buried. But only one of them could be trusted not to bury me along with him. I logged off quickly when I heard footsteps. As I slipped out, I caught sight of Tanner through the glass wall, standing in Maya's office. He was smiling, but his eyes weren't. Were they allies pretending to be enemies, or enemies pretending to be allies? If you were me, would you play both sides, or pick one and pray you guessed right? I decided not to choose, at least not yet. If Tanner and Maya were circling each other, maybe I could stay alive in the middle long enough to figure out who was the real predator. The next morning, Tanner called me into his office. The blinds were half closed, the smell of his expensive cologne heavy in the air. He gestured to a chair with that salesman grin that never quite reached his eyes. "You've been looking stressed, son. Everything all right?" My stomach tightened. He knew. Before I could answer, he slid a glossy folder across his desk. Inside was a non-disclosure agreement with my name typed in bold. "Sign this," he said smoothly, "and I can guarantee you a generous severance. 6 months' pay, health insurance, no questions asked. Walk away clean." It was tempting, too tempting. But buried in the fine print was a clause about potential legal matters, basically gagging me from ever speaking about sunshine. A muzzle disguised as a golden parachute. I stalled. "I'll need time to review this." Tanner's grin widened. "Of course. Take a day. But understand, if you don't sign, the board will hear about your after-hours data activity. They won't be kind." My blood boiled, but I forced a polite nod and left. An hour later, Maya cornered me by the elevators. She leaned in close, her perfume sharp, her voice low. "He offered you a deal, didn't he?" I froze. She already knew. "Don't be stupid," she whispered. "Take his offer, and you'll never work in this industry again. Help me instead, and you'll come out of this a hero." She slipped a business card into my pocket with a handwritten number on the back. "Text me when you're ready to play." 2 deals. 2 devils. Both watching me, both waiting for my move. So I ask you, what would you do, take the safe payout, or gamble on blowing the whole thing wide open? That night, I couldn't sleep. The office had turned into a chessboard, and I was the pawn everyone thought was oblivious. I texted Maya from a burner phone, "I'm in. What's first?" Her reply came almost immediately, "Meet me after hours. 8 p.m. I'll guide you." I arrived at the office building under cover of darkness. The elevators were dead quiet, the hum of fluorescent lights echoing in the empty hallways. Maya was waiting near the server room, dressed in black, moving like she belonged to the shadows. She handed me a folder, blueprints of the office, schedules, security camera maps, and access codes. "Tonight, we get Tanner's personal files. Everything he's hiding." I swallowed my fear. This was no longer office politics, it was a covert operation. Inside the server room, we moved quickly. Maya guided me through bypassing the card readers and security logs. I felt a thrill mixed with terror. Every keystroke could trigger alarms or worse. Finally, we reached the folder labeled Tanner_Hideout. She slipped a flash drive into my hand, "Download everything. No mistakes." I worked fast, sweating under pressure, and just as the last file copied, my phone buzzed. A message from Tanner, "Working late, huh? Don't forget, I see everything." My stomach dropped. He wasn't bluffing. They had cameras, keycard logs, maybe even spyware. We finished and left without a trace, but the tension was unbearable. Every step, every sound, felt like a countdown. Tanner was awake, watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. Would you push forward and risk it all, or pull back and hope Tanner doesn't notice you've crossed a line? The next morning, the office felt heavier, almost suffocating. People moved like shadows, avoiding eye contact. Word travels fast in corporate hallways, and I was beginning to suspect Tanner already knew something was up. At 9 a.m., my phone buzzed again, an anonymous Slack message, "You're playing a dangerous game. Stop before it's too late." I knew who it was, Tanner, or someone loyal to him. Every instinct screamed to burn the evidence and pretend nothing happened, but the thought of letting him walk free with millions stolen and a scapegoat in me was unbearable. By mid-morning, Maya approached me casually in the cafeteria, holding a coffee cup like everything was normal. Her eyes, however, told a different story. "He's onto you, she said softly, almost whispering. "Tanner knows you were in the server room last night. If we don't act, it's over." Panic bubbled up, but I forced myself to stay calm. "How do you know?" I asked. She leaned closer, lowering her voice further. "I have my ways. Security cams, email trails, someone in his team is sloppy. But he's planning something, maybe a fake audit, maybe framing you for client data theft. We have to move fast." We spent the day planning our next steps, running through possible scenarios. The tension was unbearable, and every time I glanced at Tanner in his office, that fake smile, the calm posture, I felt a chill. By evening, the weight of the situation hit me fully. I realized this wasn't just corporate sabotage, it was a life-or-death game of manipulation, secrets, and power. If you were me, would you confront Tanner directly, or try to outmaneuver him from the shadows with Maya? 2 days later, Maya called me into her office before the morning meeting. "We have a chance to corner Tanner," she said, sliding a folder across her desk. Inside were minutes from the last board meeting, showing irregularities Tanner tried to hide. "If we act smart, we can present this at today's executive session. But one wrong move and he'll throw you under the bus." My heart raced. The boardroom was filled with the company's top executives, all expecting updates on quarterly results. Tanner walked in, looking confident, but I noticed the slightest tension in his shoulders. Maya whispered, "Stick to facts. Don't give him a reason to attack you personally." I nodded, gripping my notes tightly. When it was my turn to speak, I started with routine compliance updates. Then I subtly referenced discrepancies in client accounts and department ledgers, never directly naming Tanner, but making the pattern undeniable. Eyes shifted, murmurs started. Tanner's smile faltered, and I felt a glimmer of hope. Maya took over seamlessly, presenting the sunshine evidence with pinpoint precision. Each slide, each chart, exposed Tanner's manipulation without putting me directly in the line of fire. The room erupted in questions. Tanner scrambled, trying to justify numbers and transactions, but his excuses were weak, contradictory, and transparent. By the end, the board agreed to launch a full internal investigation. Tanner looked around, his eyes finally locking on mine. A mix of fury and fear burned there. As we left the room, Maya smiled faintly. "We've started the dominoes falling. Keep your head low, there's more work ahead." Would you feel relief or dread, knowing Tanner wasn't finished and the battle was just beginning? The day after the boardroom showdown, the tension in the office was palpable. Everyone was on edge, whispering behind closed doors, and Tanner's presence was suffocating. He wasn't the same confident executive from yesterday, he was calculating, dangerous, and clearly planning a counterattack. Mid-morning, I received a calendar invite from him, "Private discussion, urgent." My stomach dropped. There was no one else in the room when I walked in. Tanner's office was cold, lights dimmed, and the blinds drawn. He gestured for me to sit, smiling that fake, polished smile. "I have to admit," he began smoothly, "you and Maya are clever. But clever doesn't always win." He tapped a folder on his desk. Inside were documents and emails linking me to suspicious activity, not fabricated, but selectively chosen to make me appear negligent. He leaned closer. "If you sign this termination agreement, you walk away with dignity. Refuse, and your so-called evidence could vanish, or worse, you could be implicated." I felt a mix of fear and anger. He had the power, the board's attention, and the ability to manipulate the narrative. But he didn't know about the double set of flash drives and the proof I had. As I left, Tanner's voice followed, "Think carefully. Every move has consequences." I realized the chessboard was no longer just Tanner versus Maya. I was in the middle, balancing risk, leverage, and survival. One wrong move, and months of careful planning could collapse. Would you face him head-on, or continue navigating the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike back? Over the next few days, Maya and I coordinated every move carefully. We scheduled meetings, double-checked server logs, and created a secure backup of all evidence. The tension was unbearable, every glance from Tanner, every whispered hallway conversation, felt like a threat. Then came the tipping point. Maya discovered that Tanner had planned a last-minute executive dinner, board members, top management, and him alone in a private room. His plan? Subtle intimidation, to scare anyone who dared speak up and to bury my involvement. Maya and I decided to act before the dinner. We prepared a digital presentation, carefully documenting every wire transfer, ghost employee, and manipulation. Our goal was not only to expose Tanner but to ensure he couldn't twist the narrative and throw me under the bus. The evening arrived. The room was elegant, dimly lit, with Tanner confident in his element. I stood beside Maya, laptop in hand, as she whispered instructions. With a deep breath, I connected the laptop to the projector. Slide by slide, the truth emerged: transfers, emails, documents, even the pre-written termination letter, everything Tanner tried to hide. The board's reactions shifted from curiosity to shock. Questions rained down, and Tanner's smile crumbled. He tried to argue, to manipulate, but the evidence was irrefutable. Every attempt to blame me failed, and his panic was evident. By the end of the presentation, the board voted unanimously to suspend Tanner and launch a full legal review. Maya and I had survived, exposed the corruption, and protected the company's integrity. Would you call this victory, or the calm before a storm of repercussions from someone with so much power? The morning after Tanner's suspension, the office felt lighter, almost surreal. People whispered and smiled, but for the first time in weeks, it wasn't out of fear, it was relief. Tanner had been removed from his corner office, escorted out under board supervision, and every Ghost employee account was frozen. Maya approached me at my desk, her expression softer than I'd ever seen. "You did well," she said. "And you kept your integrity. That counts for more than any promotion or raise." I finally exhaled, realizing the weight I'd carried alone was easing. Eric's tip-off, the Proton Mail messages, Maya's guidance, they all converged to expose Tanner, but the lesson was clear: in a world of manipulation and hidden agendas, patience, observation, and courage were your greatest weapons. The board thanked me formally, assuring me that my job was secure, my reputation intact. And yet, I knew better than to let my guard down completely. Corporate politics never truly disappear, they just wait for the next storm. As for Tanner, karma had its own rhythm. His schemes unraveled, and while legal proceedings loomed, the man who thought he could control everyone realized too late that deception has a shelf life. I returned to my desk, finally sipping a coffee without anxiety, and reflected on the ordeal. Power, greed, manipulation, they're all part of the game. But the truth, when wielded wisely, has a way of winning. If you've followed my story, remember this: courage and vigilance can turn the tables, even against the most cunning adversaries. If you enjoyed the story, subscribe, hit like, and don't miss the next videos.